Welcome everyone. I am Chrystelle Tassios and I will be your moderator for today's podcast. We have a fascinating discussion ahead on data security. But more than that, who has the power and control on encryption and the encryption keys? Can we really talk about a struggle over data control? I'm thrilled to guide the discussion today. Joining us, Alexandre Jotterand. Alexandre is a partner at IDEST, a law firm based in Lausanne, and he is specialized in the management of technology and data, a board member of the Swiss Data Protection Officer Association, and a member of the Digital Trust Expert Group of the Swiss Digital Initiative.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Alexandre. And we have also Michael Vergoz. Michael is the CTO of My Swiss Keeper, a Swiss-based company operating under Swiss laws, which offers highly secure digital vault in order to protect, store, and share company sensitive data and also individuals' data. Michael has been a true expert in cybersecurity and software design for over 25 years. He co-founded multiple security firms.
Thank you, Chrystelle. Thanks for having me as well.
Thank you, Michael. Before we deep dive into this interesting subject, Michael, can you please explain to our audience what is encryption and mostly why is it a key topic and so important for us today?
Well, I wanted to make it as simple as possible. Encryption, it's used mainly for confidentiality and integrity, and it means that it will prevent for confidentiality unauthorized individuals from reading the data, and that's the first one. And the second one, it can also ensure that the data was not altered somewhere, and it uses some cryptographic techniques to protect users against these two kind of attacks, let's say. There are two big families into cryptography. One is the custody, and the custody is you actually let third parties to store your secrets for you, and then, for example, a cloud provider will encrypt the files for you, the one you have on your storage, and that's the first family. And the big second family is the end-to-end encryption systems, which is used by WhatsApp or Signal as well. You might know them, and it's truly different because the storage of the secrets is held by the user directly. So nobody can take your secrets and decrypt your data. Even where you store your file, the provider will never be able to decrypt the data stored. So that's the two big differences in cryptographic, and so yes, that's it.
And Alexandre, from a legal perspective, maybe?
Yes, very much. So encryption, from my point of view, is not only about security. Security is a big part of it, but it also has an impact on trust, the trust that you can have in your service provider, privacy, and regulatory compliance. Let me explain. The laws that we have in place today and that have been here for quite some time now are all laws that protect personal data. So your name, but also any other information that enables anybody to identify you. And in those laws, security has always been seen as a key requirement for ensuring privacy, because you can't really have privacy if you don't have good enough security. It makes no sense for a company to apply good rules and not reuse data for any new and different purposes if in fact it does not protect the security of the data, and the data is disclosed, there is a data breach, and anybody can access it. So security has always been a big part of it, and as part of that, encryptions play a crucial role. In fact, it's even mentioned as part of the potential security measures that you can apply to the personal data in order to protect it, among various other security and organizational measures that you can have. So encryption is not per se required, but it's strongly encouraged, and I would even say that currently you can't really comply with the requirements of personal data laws if you don't implement at least some form of encryptions, meaning the custody encryptions that Michael mentioned before. And if you do so, you also have another advantage, is that it's easier to comply with the regulation. And if you go all the way to end-to-end encryptions, where the provider itself does not have the means to read the content, and it could not even allow third parties, including foreign countries, to access the data, then you have a simpler life in terms of compliance. For instance, you don't really care where the data is, because anywhere in the world it would be protected from foreign access. So that's the legal side of encryption.
Okay, so if we take our subject today, it was who holds the keys. So can we talk a little bit about that? So finally, who is holding the keys about encryption? So that's an interesting one.
Yeah, in the history, we used to use the third parties providers to store the keys for us. That was the case, and because we didn't have that much power on how devices to compute the mathematics behind the cryptographic. As today we have better devices with, let's say, powerful devices, you can now do these encryptions directly from your own device. And so today it means you can store by yourself the keys used to access your data. So we have a sliding window, we have things happening this century where you will not allow a third parties provider to store your secrets for you, and it brings more security in general, and so it helps the user to have his own confidentiality and integrity with his data.
Okay, Alexandre, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I would say that very often currently the key is still controlled, managed, or in some way in possession of the service provider, and in fact for many consumers and companies it's very difficult to manage the key themselves, and that's what we are seeing a lot. For various services there are different implementations possible, and of course from legal counsel you would always want to have the strongest encryption possible, meaning that you will be the one bringing your own key or controlling your own key. There is even systems where we have what we call double key encryption, so it means that the provider is already encrypted the data, but you hold a second key that re-encrypts the data to make sure that your vendor, your IT provider, cannot access the data. It raises questions because often time, whenever you are increasing the security, you are reducing the capabilities of the system. For instance, even for simple things like malware scanning, that's become more difficult depending on the systems you have. So in the implementation of IT systems, it's very difficult to always have security that you hold the key, and very often it is sufficient, and I will say that this way, it's not required by law to always have the sole control of your key. It's not the requirement. It's better in terms of security. Sometimes in terms of functionality, it's not as good, and there is a trade-off here.
Okay, thank you, Alexandre. If I may say, how does that translate into real life? Because it seems that more and more countries tend to limit encryption to fight terrorism or various crimes. I think it would be quite interesting to have your thoughts on this one and what some European countries or Switzerland is doing right now. What are the trends?
Yeah, that's for me? Okay.
If you want to.
No, sure. So basically, as I mentioned prior, there was this trend. So before governments and parliaments used to consider we need to increase the level of encryptions because we need to secure the data of individuals and companies. So that was the trend. That's why we have these personal data protection laws that mandates or at least say that it's a good practice to have encryptions. But the issue that comes with this end-to-end encryption, that's the best in terms of security, but it creates problem for law enforcement agencies and surveillance agencies that just cannot access the data they need in order to prevent crimes or prevent terrorism activities. And there is a clear tension currently between those that consider that we need to foster an environment where privacy prevails and those that consider that we need to make the interest of law enforcement and national security prevents. And there is a clear discrepancy and issues here. We are seeing in many countries a push for a requirement to break encryption. Also, very often it's not really breaking encryptions, it's requiring on the client side to scan the data. Some years ago it was always about preventing terrorism activities. Now the focus is on pornography and child images. And maybe one reason is that it's easier to speak about preventing child abuse because it's such a noble end in itself that no one can oppose to it. But the question always is whether the means are proportionate to the ends that we are following. So that's the big questions, and we are seeing in UK they are pushing for those regulations where a service provider have to provide either backdoors or scanning prior to encryptions, whereby in Switzerland we had a more neutral and balanced legislation, I think.
Okay, that's very interesting. Michael, your thoughts on this one from an IT perspective, maybe?
Yeah, I think there are two important things to remind here. The first one is, of course, the data, which needs to be encrypted, and if you don't have the key, then you can't decrypt it. But after that, you also have this information about accessing your data. So this is well called the metadata of the data. So when you retrieve or you push a file on a service, you leave some trace about you, your IP address, your browsers, and so on. You have tons of information, which are actually accessible for free without encryption. And these metadata are well used also by the police, also to identify the criminals behind. That was the deal with Telegram, for instance. You probably know that they didn't want to share any information with, for instance, the French government. And we're not talking about the data, we're just talking about the metadata related to the users. So that said, the police departments used to take in account these two information, so the data and the way you access this data. The second thing is that I think it's we also have this deal with the country and the frontier as well. Internet has no frontier. So even if you push a law, it's going to be complicated to apply it worldwide. So that's the main problem between the reality and the theory. And the thing is that if you disallow me to use encryption legally, I will use it on another place. And for the police, the local police department, is going to be harder for them to get the metadata. So you're not going to get information about the terrorism or the child abuse and such things. You're going to lose more data because people will be trying to find another way to send messages, to send files in the safest ways for them, for criminals. So we used to call it like the Streisand effect somehow. this we already seen that before. So that's the main problem with encryption. We have a deal where everybody can use it, and it's widely used everywhere. And we have this problem that even if you do any kind of law, it's complicated to apply it worldwide. But you can also do on top of this kind of law a big restriction on how you do access to the internet. So that's the second step about putting a kind of law like disallowing encryption, which is the case of the UK. They don't want, because the providers won't put any backdoors in their systems. So they say you have an option, you can allow or disallow encryption. If you allow it, then you are illegal in UK. If you disallow it, you're legal. But if I have an account in Switzerland, on the an Apple account in Switzerland, and I move to UK, I have my data encryption properly working. So that's the big problem. Frontier does not exist in internet. So that's the big deal that they have to deal with. That's my feeling, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. I think we reached the end of this podcast today. Thank you very much, guys. I think we can say that one thing is certain, the debate is far from being over, and I think we'll see these questions coming up on a regular basis. So I hope you enjoyed it, and if you want more information about protecting your business or your own personal data, don't forget to check out the website myswisskeeper.com or the MySwissKeeper LinkedIn page. Thanks for listening. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.